Buenas tardes, familia. Marángeli Mejía-Rabell del equipo de PHLAFF aquí con ustedes, y esta tarde tenemos la oportunidad de conectar con un talento increíble que nos llega a nosotros, sorry, I'm going to be biased, desde la Isla del Encanto, que es la fabulosa Fabiola Méndez. Y Fabiola va a estar aquí con nosotros para hablar no solamente de su práctica como cuatrista y como música, pero ella también es una artista interdisciplinaria. Nosotros vamos a tener el honor de compartir Negrura, que es un corto de Fabiola, y vamos a hablar de ese proyecto. Fabiola, bienvenida a la familia de PHLAFF. And people, my people, you know that I'm going to do the Spanglish. So I'm going to say Fabiola is an interdisciplinary artist who comes to us and will be it's part of now the PHLAFF family through her short film Negrura. She's also a super talented musician, as you can see in her area there, and she'll tell us more about it. So Fabiola, welcome to the PHLAFF family, and thank you so much for making the time to be with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm also going to do the Spanglish thing. Really excited to share a little bit of what I know about you.
It's inevitable. Let's roll with it. So thank you so much for Negrura. Really a beautiful, beautiful film. So can you tell us a little bit about what would you like audiences? What would you like to be the audience takeaway after watching the film?
I think the most important component of Negrura is the conversation that emerges after you watch the film. You have all these topics that so many of us have heard, but so many of us haven't talked about. We just normalize it. We just forget about it, deal with it, keep going. No dejes que las cosas te afecten. That type of mentality that we come from. And in this film, you know, sharing these stories from Afro-Latinx folk from Boston, at least for me, it's like I can see myself in them, and I can see, you know, the struggles of my parents. Now that after this film, we've been able to have so many conversations. You know, so many of us experience similar things, and again, we don't talk about it. So my main goal is that we get to talk, we get to have a self-reflection, we get to acknowledge that there's so much racism in all of us, regardless of if I'm dark skin or light skin. I might still have so many racist behaviors that I'm, you know, passing from generation to generation. And not because we're Latinos that immediately exempt us from being racist. So that conversation, I think, is important to me, that among Latinos and Latinas and Latinx we have.
Muchísimas gracias. Thank you so very much for that. And you're absolutely right. It's definitely a conversation piece. You watch this film, yes, we definitely, and those are important conversations that we need to have as a community. Now, you know, I touched on your intro as I was introducing you on the fact that you're a musician. And within Negrura, we also see a character that may not be, you know, it's not background music, but it's an important part of the film, which is el cuatro. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes. Being a cuatrista, since I was 6 years old, the instrument has become my medium of expression, even more so than my words. And with this film, the director, Monica Cohen, and I were exploring the idea of how can we make this more tangible? How can we show an instrument being the method of expression? So throughout the film, you have the stories from the members of the community that I interviewed and that we had the conversation with. And you hear how the cuatro reacts to each one of the stories that they're telling. And for me, it was an incredible experience because everything was improvised. So what you watch on the film, nothing was planned. Nothing that I played was written or well thought. It was a reaction to what I heard. So in that way, it's unique that it was one take. You know, this is what it is. I want it to be as organic and as truthful as possible. And then you have the cuatro, which also for us Puerto Ricans, means, it's like this instrument that reminds us so much of home, so much of the strength of our people, the fact that it's made of the woods of our land, y con el sudor de la frente of our people, like what that means of resilience and the sound of the mountains of Puerto Rico. Like you hear a cuatro, regardless of where you are in the world, if you're Puerto Rican, and like a tear will come down, right? Like is this such a powerful sound that I wanted to use that idea of what it means to us as Puerto Ricans. And even though the film is not about Puerto Ricans only, it's about all of us Latinx as family. But then also having the improvisation and the emotions and the anger and the pride and the beauty throughout the music.
Thank you. That's beautiful. And yeah, el cuatro es como el coquí en instrumento. It's that kind of thing, right? That it's like, eso tú sabes que es boricua. So gracias por, just the fact that you are embracing the instrument, right? And I know you do other things, but that's like, that's bringing a new chapter, right? A lot of people will connect a cuatro with legacy, which is really important, and heritage, but it's also part of emerging practices within the field of music. So that's important, and I appreciate you and respect the fact that you're doing that. People, it's about the remix and the new takes, right? So speaking of that, right now the bulk of your work is as a musician, but now you're engaging in this other part of your life. So what do you learn about yourself as part of this process?
Well, a lot about my identity. And I don't know, it felt like when I was growing up, it wasn't a conversation really. It's like, this is your skin color, whatever, deal with it. Again, similar to what I said earlier. And just thinking about how my experiences might be different from folks that have a lighter skin, even if we speak the same language, even if we were born in the same town, and understanding why is that? Why was I treated differently, and differently usually was like treated less because I looked a certain way. So understanding that and being in a space where the conversations were welcome to talk about that, because usually people don't want to talk about it. It's like it creates too much issue, it creates mucha roce or whatever, and everyone's like, no, let's just talk about stuff that unites us.
Nena, no hables de eso.
Exacto, no hables de eso. So having the space.
You're bringing that up.
Exactly, throughout this film, to talk about it comfortably, to hear about, these people's experiences. And also one of the most important factors for me was acquiring the language to understand and to define what happens around me. And I think that's so important, because once you have the language, then you have the tools to fight back, or to talk to someone about it and not be like, there was a microaggression in my workplace or in my family or whatever. And I knew it was wrong, but I just didn't know what to do. So I just stayed quiet. But by having the language, then you have this tool that gives you the confidence to be like, hey, this is not okay because this is that. So that was a huge takeaway for me, learning how to name all these different things.
Yeah, you got to call it. And a lot of times, thank you so much for offering that, because I think that from a good place, right? But one of the misconceptions is that talking about it is problematic. It goes with the shh, right? It's part of that whole package deal. No hables de eso, nena, para que tú le vas a decir algo, nena, fíjate de eso. Tú sigue haciendo tu trabajo. Don't say anything, right? And what we fail to see, or que se nos va el avión, como diríamos en la isla en ese momento, es que we're normalizing things, and that without the conversation, there cannot be change, right? So they're the same way that in our families and the cállate la boca entre familia, they're tough conversations or sometimes uncomfortable conversations, but that lead to a better place.
Exactly.
Same in the workplace, same in an educational setting. You know, you talk about microaggressions, hello. They're real, and the same way that we normalize within a family setting, a lot of people normalize social norms and interactions and think that jokes can be really funny to them, and we're like, nah, nobody's laughing here. But the why, right? And calling it opens the space.
Exactly. For change, for growth.
Claro, on both ends.
Exactly.
And there's a learning curve. You also get to hear, you know, a lot of times, and hopefully in the majority of the cases, things are not being said with a bad intention. It's just not having the understanding of the repercussions or what that means to us.
Exactly.
And vice versa. And it's that exchange that really can lead to a better understanding interculturally, intergenerationally, at all levels. So thank you so much for offering that. And, you know, I know that in the beginning of our conversation, as we were getting ready to do this, I told you a little bit about the work that the Youth Salon is doing. Shout out to Daniel and the Youth Salon PHLAFF. But part of that work, right? Because we have somebody and we have team members and a community of creatives, that notion of tú eres músico and that's what you are, that's changing with, you know, the emerging practices again, with the virtuality, with just people using different tools to communicate and to connect with audiences. And in our case, it's also exploring este nuevo capítulo con el 4, with folks that are part of the AMLA community, which is Artistas y Músicos Latinoamericanos, through a process of classes, 4 classes, which have not happened, and PHLAFF is a proud collaborator of that effort. But I wanted to ask you, what would your advice be for emerging creatives as they pursue, you know, their creative juices, practice, work?
I think what you said is so important, that nowadays the creative practices are changing, and the fact that we don't have to like be under one umbrella or like you're this and this is what you do. Understanding that, you know, we can diversify, and like the power of collaboration, even like you don't need to do it all either. It's like there's so many people around us that are doing beautiful work. So taking advantage of that. But most definitely, even before you think about all of that, when you're starting, and this is something that's part of Negrura and the film, is that when you are an artist, your practice comes with a power, you know, and the power that lies behind our practice is that we have a voice, and that we have people hear us, people listen to us. So regardless of what you want people to take away from your creative practice, being very mindful that we do have that power, and choosing and deciding how you want to use it, and knowing that there's no wrong answers. You know, if you just want to do music for yourself in your room, but if you want to do music for like a large audience with, you know, talking about different social justice topics, or, you know, like every end is allowed because it's art. But understanding that has a power, and knowing how you're going to use it to better it for yourself and for the people around you. I think that, you know, it's deep. And when you're starting, it's like, what? But it's so important to have that ground, to have that, you know, it's ese tallo del árbol, so that then the tree can bloom, having the roots planted.
Absolutamente. And, you know, hearing you, there's a word that, you know, I know it's a very important word, but it has been somewhat abused, that you need to be authentic, right? It's one of those words that has become but it is true. At the end of the day, el hecho de que la palabra ha sido abusada y abusada doesn't take away from the fact that you need to keep that level of honesty and authenticity with yourself and with those around you, and that it's okay to explore. And it doesn't mean that you have to master everything. We are lifelong learners, and you know, every day is a new learning curve in a different aspect of our lives. And we should embrace our creative practice that way, understanding, you know, I always say, come with an open mind and an open heart.
Exactly. And understand that that can evolve and change through time as well.
Correcto.
Like you can be an artist that wants to focus in this right now, but then a couple years later, you're like changing like your goals or whatever you want to go for. So
that's part of it, right?
El camino.
Camino, mucho camino andar. Fabiola, what a pleasure to spend time with you. Thank you so much for making the time to share with us.
Thank you.
And with the AMLA community, and know that you have family in Philly and that we can wait to have you here. And hopefully at some point we'll bring you to, so you can hang with the Cuatro project.
Yes, hopefully very soon. Thank you so much for having me. This was a pleasure.
Absolutamente. Familia, stay tuned for Fabiola Méndez. Check her music, check Negrura, and just continue supporting creatives. Thank you so much.